So the attack on meritocracy continues, this time, not surprisingly, at the wonderfully progressive Sydney University. Here's a clip from Paul Murray Live.
Which is, the University of Sydney Union says its affirmative action policy will ensure that teams heading to the Australian Easter Debating Championship, or novices next month, will include more persons of colour and other minority ethno-cultural backgrounds, as well as born women and those who identify as cis male. There are quotas for people from non-elite public schools too, who get in on the grounds that they are disadvantaged in debating opportunities. Caroline, I might be a dunce, but I thought to get on the debating team you had to be a good debater.
Well, that would make the most sense, Paul, but then you underestimate the identity politics that has completely overtaken our universities, and this is just yet another example of what we see day in, day out. Now, I mean, debating should all be about making good points, having the best argument, having the facts there to support what you're saying, and it shouldn't be about who is making the argument. But this is the problem with identity politics. It's not about what you say. It's not about having the facts and having the best argument. It's about who is saying them.
No, of course not. It's not about who has the best arguments. It's about the race, gender or sexuality of the speaker. That's what matters. Now, you may have noticed that Paul Murray read that incorrectly. It's actually others that don't identify as cis male. So basically there's too many straight white males on the debating teams. Would there be a problem if there were a disproportionate number of other races or 92 genders? No, of course not. So for a little more detail, there's an article over at The Australian. Race, Gender Politics, Swamp Great Debate. The University of Sydney Union, which describes itself as one of the best debating institutions in the world, says its affirmative action policy will ensure that teams heading to the Australian Easter Debating Championships, or Easters, for novices next month will include more persons of colour and others from minority ethno-cultural background, as well as born women and others who don't identify as cis male. There are quotas for people from non-elite public schools too, who get in on the grounds that they are disadvantaged in debating opportunities. Now, it's worth noting here the reference to novices. The University of Sydney Union Debating Society says that the Easters is the first of 4 major intervarsity tournaments held throughout the year. It's classified as a novice tournament, which means that it is only available to debaters who have not yet debated at Australs or haven't been to Easters more than 3 times. As such, it's a great way to enter competitive university debating. So it's not like they're sending these newly diversified teams off to the World Championships, but still, shouldn't teams be selected on the basis of merit? But wait, there's more. The union, which boasts of being an equal record holder when it comes to making the finals at the World Debating Championships, will also employ equity officers to attend the tournament to assist those who find debating intensely competitive and stressful. Oh, Jesus! This can intentionally or unintentionally lead to people feeling victimised, the union says. But the equity officers will provide safe avenues to voice concern. Is there anything that doesn't make university students feel victimised? Those who find debating intensely competitive and stressful. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest certain people have a problem with that toxic masculine trait of competitiveness. But if you're going to enter debating competitions, then of course it's going to be intensely competitive. The idea is to win the debate. I mean, why am I even mansplaining this to begin with? Sydney University student Nina Dillon-Britton, pictured here looking smug and privileged, praised the initiative, saying affirmative action policies had fostered a diverse and inclusive environment. I'm a female debater and it created a culture where more women were able to put themselves forward, she said. We have to recognise subconscious bias and stereotypes, which mean women and people of colour are disadvantaged when they speak. We don't actually have to recognise subconscious bias because it's unsubstantiated nonsense at this point, but do go on. We shouldn't just be happy with only allowing privileged people. We should be encouraging as much diversity as possible in debating. But why should there be more diversity in debating? Shouldn't debating be for people who are interested in debate? And for the ones that compete, at least good at it? Which means being able to deal with the stress of public speaking. But of course, if you just throw out the buzzwords of diversity and inclusion, you cloak yourself in virtue, and anyone that opposes such ideas are obviously bigots. Like Joshua Crawford, the Sydney University Liberal Club president, who criticised the quotas, saying they were an affront to fairness and merit. Well, you would say that, wouldn't you, privileged white boy? Mr. Crawford said it was a disgrace that some students who have worked tirelessly to become some of the university's top debaters would be prevented from being on the team because of their gender. It is equally abhorrent that there will be female debaters who have every right to be on the debating team by their own merits, who will now have the legitimacy of their position questioned. Now, as the article notes, some of these guidelines may prove difficult to implement. For example, the proportion of debaters who identify as non-cis male across all teams attending Easters must be no less than 50%. 1/3 of tournament adjudicators must also identify as non-cis male. In addition, each of the top 3 teams must also have at least one debater who identifies as being a person of colour from a minority ethno-cultural background or marginalised by white supremacy. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to feel marginalised by white supremacy too. I mean, where's my CEO position that was promised to me by the patriarchy? Teams must also include debaters who attended a school meeting, the criteria listed in section 568 of the regulations, which basically means a disadvantaged public school as opposed to a private school. The University of Sydney Union expects to send 11 teams of 3 speakers each and 11 adjudicators. The union pays the fees, which are as much as $380 per person, but the union will fund only those teams where the proportion of non-cis male women identifying people reaches 50%. At least 4 non-cis male women identifying people must be selected in the top 3 teams, the guidelines say. The proportion of people who identify as being a person of colour from a minority ethno-cultural background or marginalised by white supremacy must be at least 25%, the guidelines say. At least one person who identifies as belonging to one or more of the aforementioned groups must be selected in the top 3 teams. I'd hate to be in charge of figuring out how all that's going to work. Media personality and former Sydney University debater Adam Spencer said that if the community overwhelmingly wanted the changes, then good luck to them. But he argued that the selection for the World Debating Championships should continue to be merit-based. You should send your very best team at any given time to the World Championships, which is the jewel in the crown of debating, he said. Spencer won the World's Best Speaker Award in the 1996 World Championships. Well, you'd hope that the teams chosen for the most prestigious competitions will be based on merit. But what happens if very few of those people marginalised by white supremacy aren't good enough based on merit to make those teams? Will they then insist on more diversity and inclusion measures? As usual, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next time.